Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopidana Vallabha Girivardhari Jai Gopidana Vallabha Girivardhari Yasodhanana Brajadana Ranjana Yasodhanana Brajadana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopidana Vallabha Girivardhari Yasodhanana Brajadana Ranjana Yasodhanana Brajadana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Shri Shri Radha Madhava Ki Jai Sankirtan Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, Chapter 3, entitled The Lord's Pastimes out of Vrindavan, text number 19. Bhagavan api visvatma Lokaveda patunagaha Kaman Sesheva Darvatyam Ashakta Sankhyamasthita Bhagavan api Visvatma Lokaveda Patanuga Kaman Sesheva Darvatyam Ashakta Sankhyamasthita Bhagavan api Visvatma Lokaveda Patanuga Kaman Shiseva Darvatyam Ashakta Sankhyamasthita Ladies, Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead. Api, also. Vishva Atma, the super soul of the universe. Loka, customary. Veda, Vedic principles. Patanuga, follower of the path. Kaman, the necessities of life. Shisheve, enjoyed. Dvarvatyam, in the city of Dwarka. Ashakta, without being attached. Sankhyam, knowledge in Sankhya philosophy. Astitaha, being situated. Translation. Simultaneously, the personality of Godhead enjoyed life in the city of Dwarka, strictly in conformity with the Vedic customs of society. He was situated in detachment and knowledge, as enunciated by the Sankhya system of philosophy. Purport. While Maharaj Yudhisthira was the emperor of the earth, Lord Sri Krishna was the king of Dwarka and was known as Dwarkadish. Like other subordinate kings, he was under the regime of Maharaj Yudhisthira. Although Lord Sri Krishna is the supreme emperor of the entire creation, while he was on this earth, he never violated the principles of the Vedic injunctions because they are the guide for human life. Regulated human life, according to the Vedic principles, which are based on the system of knowledge called Sankhya philosophy, is the real way of enjoyment of the necessities of life. Without such knowledge, detachment and custom, the so-called human civilization is no more than an animal society of eat, drink, be merry and enjoy. The Lord was acting freely as he willed, yet by his practical example He taught not to lead a life which goes against the principles of detachment and knowledge. Attainment of knowledge and detachment is very elaborately discussed in Sankhya philosophy is the real perfection of life. Knowledge means to know that the mission of the human form of life is to end all miseries of material existence, and that in spite of having to fulfill the bodily necessities in a regulated way, one must be detached from such animal life. Fulfilling the demands of the body is animal life, and fulfilling the mission of spirit soul is the human mission. Om Ajnanatimanandasya Gyananana Salakaya Shakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivedanta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Again and again, the Supreme Personality of Godhead appears in this world. And thus he is known as an avatar, or one who descends into this world. Sometimes the Lord appears in the form of an expansion, because it said, Advaitam, Achyutam, Anantarupam. Krishna has unlimited forms. Why would the Supreme Lord be limited by one form? Rather, he has unlimited form. But each form within itself is again unlimited, because the Supreme Lord is never limited. Angani yasya sakalendriya vrittimanti. The functions of his senses are also interchangeable. He can eat with his eyes, see with his hands or ears. In this way, he's not limited like we are. In our current existence, we are quite limited by the body and the senses. We can only hear so much, see so much. I can't see what is behind unless I turn my head, but then I don't see the other side which is behind. So behind I never see. That is the nature of the bodily existence for us, limited. And as a result, we naturally make mistakes. We see someone coming at a distance and we're sure that it's someone we know, but when they're closer, oh no, stranger, just looks like that person, but really looks like him a lot. Yeah, that's the nature of the material senses. They're limited and they make mistakes. Therefore, it is said that one must base his life on knowledge. Such knowledge then cannot be based on perception of the senses. I only believe it when I see it with my own eyes. But your own eyes have made many mistakes before. So why so much faith in our own eyes? Better we take knowledge from an authorized source. Scriptures are not ordinary, because scriptures are revealed knowledge. Different traditions in the world are making the same claim. They claim that their scriptures are revealed knowledge, that their scriptures are not ordinary. So we accept also that there are several traditions which have scriptures that are revealed knowledge. Still, we think that the Vedas are the most elaborate and most complete descriptions of the truth. Therefore, the word Veda and the word knowledge are synonymous. Basically, Veda means knowledge. It is said the Vedic literature is apuraseya. It is not from man. It is described that initially the universe was empty, and that Brahma, who was the representative of the Supreme Lord, was the only living entity in the universe, and that Brahma then did the secondary part of the creation. So it is said then at one point, from the mouth of Brahma, the Vedas manifested, which had been inspired by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So in this way, Vedic knowledge came into the universe, and all knowledge is ultimately based on Vedic knowledge. Vedic knowledge is very detailed, very extensive, and quite scientific in many ways. And there's a lot of science that may be forgotten now in modern times. But the most essential element of all Vedic knowledge, which deals with different aspects of life, how to build a house, how to protect oneself with mantras, how to heal diseases. Also, some healing is going on by mantra, some healing by herbs, and then the lowest form of healing is through operation. Even in the Vedic times, operations were sometimes performed. We find in the Sushruta Samhita descriptions that they were even doing eye operations to remove cataract. So like that, operation was there, but that was considered the lowest form of healing, and because it would leave some permanent damage. So that's now operation is the state of the art. And if you haven't had an operation, you haven't really been treated. Must have some operation, but then there is a scar, and so on. So the Vedic culture was a different culture at a different time, more refined. It is interesting that we find in ancient stories some remnants of also Vedic tradition. So in Russia, there is also an ancient tradition, and one of our main preachers, world leaders, went there, and they asked him to meet a professor, because this professor was influential in advising the government about this movement. So he met the professor, and he tried to explain a little bit about Krishna consciousness, and the professor said, yes, we know all that. He said, Dad, we all know that. He said, for us, that's not the real issue. He said, the real issue is whether the Vedas have their origin in India or their origin in Russia. In Russia? I said, yes. He said, in the Volga region, actually, there is an ancient culture, and from there stems an ancient book, which is as old as Russia itself, the Russian Veda. And in this book, the main personality is known as Kishan. Kishan? You heard that name? It said, and it describes the life of Kishan, and at one point it describes how he defeats a great and powerful serpent. Plagiarism? Possibly. It very much resembles the Vedic literature from India. So it says that in ancient Russia, this scripture was known. And there is more to it. It said that there were princes, and these princes would protect the kingdom. And they would have bows and arrows, and they would whisper on their arrows, and the arrows would never miss their target. So again, it reminds us very much of the Mahabharata, where we see that the various heroes were invoking mystic power upon their arrows by speaking mantras. So they were speaking mantras upon their arrows, and such arrows would never miss their target. So interesting, the parallel that we find between the different cultures of the world. And one can search out many, many things like this. Many remnants of apparent Vedic culture are found in different parts of the world. And of course, we're interested in this. For example, in India, in Delhi and in Jaipur, there are two places where they have a Jantar Mantar. So Jantar Mantar is very famous. Many tourists from all over the world are going to see the Jantar Mantar. It is a Vedic observatory. It shows different contraptions are there, like a staircase, different arches, formations of columns, some metal arches, and they're all meant to measure the position of the stars. And in that way, in ancient times, they would determine the position of the stars and accordingly make calculations. Interesting is that within this Yantar Mantar, there is a formation of columns which are all at a certain distance. Then we find in England, we find Stonehenge, a formation of rocks. And we find that the distances and the directions of these formations are exactly the same as the Yantar Mantar in India. We find a similar arrangement in Mexico on some of the pyramids. We find again the same kind of columns in the same formation. Those who are familiar with Vedic knowledge know very well how these observatories work. So when some scientists who were familiar with the Indian observatories went to Stonehenge, they noticed that the formation of the rocks was not exactly in line with the position of the planets today, but the position of planets change over time a little bit. There is some deviation over time. So they calculated back when this formation would have been correct, and it came to 17,000 years. Therefore, they put a date on Stonehenge of 17,000 years old. And in this way, you can turn it off. It is okay. It's allowed. It would help. It's a nice ringtone. So it's interesting to see such common elements around the world, and which indicate that Vedic culture once had a greater influence around the world than is known today. This is in line with Vedic scriptures, which claim that Vedic influence was much greater than we think. So it is said that some 5,000 years ago, when Maharaj Yudhisthira, who is described here, was the ruler, it said that he was the emperor of the world. Well, I never read anything about that in the history books that I grew up with. In my country, the Netherlands, the history books are quite different. But it says that as far as history goes back, it says that people came and settled into the Netherlands approximately some 2,500 years ago, and that they came by boats down the rivers and then settled in these lower lands, which at that time were regularly flooded, at least half of it. So the people at that time were quite primitive. They were not having any metal. They were using like bows and arrows with points of a stone on it, right? And we have museums. We have museums in the Netherlands where these things are kept, and we go there on school excursions and so on. And so I grew up with this, and I saw like that. Yes, and then the Netherlands are sort of identified in Roman history books also as like being about 2,500 years old. That's it. And then there was quite a simple culture. But they were distinct from the Germanic tribes as a separate countries. And the Germanic tribes, they were again having a somewhat different culture. So like that, Europe had its various cultures. In England, there were the Celtic people with Druids and these kind of priests. And this goes all back to about 2,500 years, and anything before that, unknown. Remnants of all that is still left. Like in Ireland, they still speak Celtic language, Gaelic, right? And they still have Gaelic music, and it sort of seems more similar to Indian music in many ways. So the ancient history of Europe is kind of not really known. It's not known. We don't actually have in our Western history much information. In Western history, we have information about Egypt being about 5,000 years old, with pyramids and all those things that we have. But then India, right? India has a history which, certainly, according to their own historical books, trace back much more than 5,000 years. So in that way, we see different descriptions of history. So here we are reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is known as the Bhagavad Purana, or Purana means that what is old. It is history. So the history of the Bhagavat. Bhagavat is a reference to Bhagavan. Bhagavan means the Supreme Lord, who has all opulences in full, all strength, all knowledge, all beauty, all wisdom, all renunciation, and all fame. So in this way, Bhagavat means the story about the Supreme Lord. So Bhagavad Purana is the history of the Supreme Lord. So the Bhagavad Purana follows the various appearances of the Supreme Lord. It follows the original position of the Supreme Lord. And in this way, also the history of the world at that time when the Lord appeared in different incarnations. So here we are in prehistoric time. Generally, prehistoric time is depicted as dinosaurs and cavemen, right? And all that. Yeah. So it may be true that in certain parts of Europe, it was like that there were cavemen. But in India at that time, there were not cavemen. 5,000 years ago, there was Yudhisthira Maharaj, who was counting as the emperor of the world. And as far as these tribals in these cold northern countries of Europe, right, they were not particularly worried about them. These tribal areas, they basically let them be for whatever they were, and they just contained the tribals, right, that they wouldn't come out of the areas. And there were huge areas that were considered tribal. So Europe was really a tribal culture, and in one sense it kept its tribal identity over the years, and even brought some of that to Australia. What to say? So it's another light on history today than the general one we learn in school. But Maharaj Yudhisthira was a highly cultured personality. He was a personality who was by nature non-violent. He was a personality who by nature was the well-wisher of all. And he was concerned with upliftment of the general populace of the entire planet. Violence did have a function to protect principles of religion, to protect the principles of Dharma, but for no other purpose. Just as the police sometimes, they'll carry a weapon for the sake of avoiding criminals, to exploit the world at large. And you see sometimes, I remember in this Haiti some years ago, there was this earthquake, big disaster, and then the law failed, the law enforcement failed, and there was huge plundering. Everyone started to plunder the shops. Everyone started to clean out the shops immediately. So we see that this is what happens when there is no government and no control through force. A certain element of force and fear is required in society at large. Therefore, non-violence or ahimsa will not be effective if the government is not showing some strength, because then lower elements will get out of control in society, always as such lower elements. But otherwise, violence is to be condemned. That's right. Violence is to be condemned. It's not like a positive thing at all. So Maharaj Yudhisthira was such a personality. Maharaj Yudhisthira was, even for his food, he was not killing animals. He was a vegetarian. Because he was merciful. He was merciful. Why unnecessarily cause suffering to other living beings, even to animals? That was not his interest. Such kings like Maharaj Yudhisthira would sometimes kill animals, wild animals in the forests. Because in the forests there were many hermits who were practicing spiritual life. Vedic culture was a culture which is interesting because spirituality was in the center of society. Different than modern culture where economy is in the center of society. Now it's economy, that's like the central focus. It's all about money, really. That's the essence, It's like, my son is doing really well. He's doing really well. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. That he graduated, right? Like with honors, you know that, right? Yeah. No, but, and then subsequently, he got a really, really good top job, a top job. He's now a top executive, in a multinational corporation. Oh yes, he's doing really well, very well. Okay, well, what about his moral standards in life? Does he drink? Well, what kind of question is that? It's like, it's part of the job. He has to lunch. He has to wine and dine executives of other companies. That's part of social life. But I would say in moderation. Maharaj Yudhisthira never touched alcohol because according to his values, that was not suitable for consumption. That was not suitable. That was something that degrades people. And Maharaj Yudhisthira was only interested in self-elevation in life. He understood that the deeper purpose of life, that life is not only meant to be comfortable. So, how's life? We're very comfortable, very comfy. Life is good and comfy. That's nice that life is good and comfy, but that's not the goal of life. That's only the additional requirement. We need a place to stay, we need something to eat, we need a dress, we need a blanket at night, and so many things. We have a few needs, and it's nice if those things are of good quality and comfortable. Then they'll give us good energy. But that's not the goal of life. The goal of life is a greater goal. The goal of life is to improve ourselves. That is the goal of life. To become better people. To grow in value. To grow and to become a very noble, saintly personality. At this stage it's time for a story, otherwise we fall asleep. So, in the Ramayana, there is a story, and once it is describing it at the end of the situation. Sita had been kidnapped by this demon Ravana. Ravana desired this beautiful Sita, although Sita was the wife of Ram. But Ravana somehow or other had been cursed that if ever he would take a woman by force, that he would die. And he'd been cursed by a powerful sage, and he just was afraid that it might just come to pass. So he never took Sita by force, but he tried to force her to surrender to him. So Sita was being harassed by a group of Rakshasis, demoniac ladies, who were constantly pushing her, torturing her mentally, physically, right? Pinching her and not allowing her any rest. So Sita was in a very miserable condition. So then Ram came to that island, Sri Lanka, to save Sita, and there was a huge battle. And at the end of the battle, Ravana was killed. So then it was Hanuman, the monkey servant of Ram, who went to Sita, to that garden where Sita was kept. He knew where it was. And Hanuman came there. And Hanuman made an announcement and said, "The war is over. Sita, you are free." But Sita was still being harassed by these Rakshasis. So Hanuman said, "Oh, I'll just kill them." And Sita said, "No, Hanuman, no, that's not required." And Hanuman said, "No, it's nothing for me. It's a small thing. I'll just kill them. I'll just kill them. That's easy." And Sita said, "No, Hanuman, this is not right." So then Hanuman, Sita told Hanuman a story. And she was explaining that there was a hunter in the forest who was like killing different animals. And then that hunter one day came upon a bush, and suddenly in that bush there was a tiger. This tiger roared, and the hunter stood right there with a bow and arrow, and it's not a great weapon against a tiger. And next moment the roles were reversed. The hunter was running and running with the tiger on his heels. Then there was a tree, and somehow or other that hunter climbed in the tree, and he came in the tree, and as he was up in the tree, there was a bear. In between a bear and a tiger. He looked up, he looked down. What to do? Then the tiger began to speak. And the tiger said to the bear, he said, "You see that man? He is a hunter. A low-class man, cruel and merciless. He is our mutual enemy. If you kick him down, I will eat him." "No," the bear said, "no, that I cannot do. He has come to my home, so he is my guest. I must offer him protection. No, I cannot do that." Then that tiger said, he said to the hunter, he said, "You see that bear? If you kick down this bear, then I will eat him instead of you." The hunter immediately kicked down the bear, and the bear was falling when last minute he managed to grab a branch. And the bear was dangling on the branch and somehow or other climbed back up into the tree. And the tiger spoke, and the tiger said, "See that man, see what he did. You gave him shelter as your guest, but he betrayed you and he kicked you down. Now you kick him down before he does it again." "No," the bear said, "the fact that he misbehaved doesn't justify that I will misbehave as well." That was the bear. So, a very noble bear. And we must all become noble bears. That is the goal of life. The goal of life is to not just be crude like the hunter who is selfish and who establishes his own happiness at the expense of another, but to become noble like that bear. And to be ready to put the welfare of others first. So such an exalted soul. And that was Maharaj Yudhisthira. He was such an exalted soul. And therefore, Krishna wanted him to be the emperor of the world. Someone had to be. And Krishna wanted that there would be such a personality so that this noble mentality could spread all over the world, and that in that way the entire world would become peaceful. Of course, the barbarians would be barbarians, and you would just keep them in their area, and let them be what they were, right? But still, even those barbarians, even those tribals, they also picked up elements of Vedic culture. They also, although not entirely, and therefore, yes, even today, we see that in India, there is a class of people who are considered not very cultured. And these class, they become the sweepers. And sometimes you see that the sweepers, they are not vegetarian. We see that they keep pigs. And sometimes we see that they roast those pigs on a fire in the street. You can just see like that. So in a crude way, we see. So it's okay, it's condoned. They are not cultured people. What can be done? Condone it. It's not in any way accepted as a good standard, but they're non-cultured people. What can be done? But no facility, no butcher shops, nothing. That is Vrindavan. Vrindavan is like that. There's no butcher for them. No. If they want, they can roast their pigs in the road themselves. That's it. Not a very attractive thing. Not nicely dished out in a fancy restaurant, nicely decorated and looking actually like, whoa, exquisite. No. So, that culture of non-violence is highly glorified in the Bhagavad Purana. Because when that culture is there, then naturally everyone has a right to exist. That is the duty of the king. The people, all living beings are known as praja, that which has taken birth and has a right to exist. So that's very important. Somehow or other, that is the mood, right? So if there are some birds that take some of the grains of the field, that's okay. They can have. You can chase them away, but you cannot kill. But they'll come back from the back somehow or other. I have seen in India a fruit tree, and I saw that they made a few bamboo sticks with a rope in the tree, and then a man was sitting under the tree pulling those sticks, and they make noise, and then all the animals that want to eat the fruits in the tree, they go away, you know. And this man was sitting there just under that tree all the time, the whole day and night, in the day chasing away birds, and every once in a while he sleeps most of the time, then he wakes up. And when he sleeps, the birds are feasting, and again he's pulling the rope. But so it may look very kind of foolish and backward, right? But if you look a little deeper and see, no, this is a non-violent culture. This is a Vaishnava culture. This is a merciful culture. Not killing. No, not killing like that. When Prabhupada was in Mombasa, in Africa, he walked past a house and there was a boundary wall and there was a tree built into the wall. Big tree in the wall just on both sides against the tree. Prabhupada said, here lives a devotee. Here lives a devotee. Because he didn't cut down the tree. He respected life. Anyway, so I've highlighted that point a lot now as being very central to Vedic culture. Very central. And also therefore very central to our culture. And it's something to reflect about and something to cultivate in ourselves. That kind of non-violent attitude. Not only physically non-violent, but also mentally non-violent. You can file a case for divorce in the West on the basis of mental cruelness. Mental cruelty. Not cruelty. Mental cruelty. Because not every man marries a lady for love. Some men marry a lady so that they can torture someone mentally. So, you have no brain. You are useless. Can you do anything right? Oh my God, you know what I mean? It's like your father is just the same, you know, and totally mentally destroys someone. And that makes him feel good. So he comes home to every day to mentally destroy his wife. And that gives him a sense of well-being. Feels good. So we need marriages that are actually based on love. Or let's begin with some kindness, maybe, before we even use a big word like love. How about kindness? Husbands who are kind. Actually, marriages break, even in India now, and 90% of the time it's the man's fault. Because they're useless. That's the problem in this age. Now, I'm sorry to say it, but in this age, men are useless, absolutely. They have no sense of responsibility at all. Right? They don't take care. See, the ladies, they want children, and so they have a program, they want, put things in order for the family. So they're kind of dutiful and taking care of things. And the men, they're just a bunch of, they're lazy. They don't take responsibility. That's the problem in this age, actually. So we need some men with character. Not only men, ladies also. We need men with character who actually take responsibility. And when they marry, who take responsibility to provide the needs of the family, who are kind and very exemplary, saintly persons. Then there will be no domestic issues. Then the ladies will naturally be inclined to take shelter. See? Ladies are by nature looking for some shelter. Yeah? But the men don't provide it. Then the women said, these useless bums, we'll do it ourselves. Yeah. What can you do? That's the situation today, actually. Yeah. I'm sorry to say it, guys, but the truth is the truth, right? Now that I'm on the topic, I may as well finish it off, right? I mean, there's all this talk, about about women becoming equal to men and all that kind of stuff. You read about feminism, you read about that, right? So, but that's wrong. That's wrong. And I'll tell you why. So because, it's really not necessary for the women to become equal to the men, because the men already have become equal to the women. There are no men. Men are hard to come by. They're all women. Okay, with all that, let's see if there are some reactions here. If anybody's got something to say. Any comments or any questions? Okay, yes.
You mentioned that the Vedic culture was spread throughout the world. So can you explain why so much of it has been lost, except for India?
Yeah, so the Vedic culture was spread very widely. We still see lots of remnants in many places of Vedic culture. I spoke of Russia, and Russia is full of such things. Also, towards the Middle East, you have Turkmenistan, and there you have temples that are dedicated to Agni. And they have traditionally, pujaris come from India, traditionally so, to do the worship. And the local people are going to the temple. You have a sika, right? You're shaved up and you have this lock of hair at the back. And if you look at old Mongolian paintings, you look exactly like them. Same, So this culture was spread, many elements of this culture were actually there in the past. And we even see in Russia, we see caves which have paintings, and again, the same haircut, which is kind of interesting that many elements of this culture can be found historically. Obviously, there are many links between Greek culture and Indian culture. The philosophy of Plato is practically Indian philosophy, very similar to Indian philosophy. And that is the foundation of the Western philosophy. Therefore, the Western philosophy also has roots in Indian philosophy, as we can see. So we should not underestimate the influence of the East. Then I was in a program, and there was this Qigong master from China. And the Qigong master, and we were also invited to go there, and the Qigong master then was explaining and gave a history of how Qigong actually came from India. And the Qigong master gave a name, such and such person from India brought it at this and this time to China, and then started a school, and that school developed, and this is how Qigong came. And it was interesting to hear it from a Qigong master, how that knowledge came from India. If you go to Cambodia, right, the main temple is Angkor Wat. It's a Vishnu temple, you can still see. If you go to Mexico and you look at the pyramids, you will see on the pyramids, you'll see pictures that decorate the pyramids of different gods. And then someone says, this is the rain god. And then you look at a South Indian temple and you see a picture of the rain god, and he looks exactly the same. There was a connection. According to the Vedic information, there was a tunnel from Ceylon, from Sri Lanka, to South America. What to say? I know these things sound like a little new agey, right? But a lot of the new agey things are old agey. And we may not know exactly, because it's very difficult to trace out such ancient history. But there are many indications, definitely, that this culture was once more widely spread. Okay, are some of the men ready to defend their position or what? You just took that from me. I called you women and you didn't protest. Okay, I'm trying, huh? Yes?
Maharaj, I heard Prabhupada saying that this whole planet was called Bharatvarsha. It was not just India, that tract of land called Bharatvarsha. And all...
Srimad Bhagavatam says that. Not Prabhupada, but Srimad Bhagavatam says.
And also, I heard Prabhupada saying that all of you Europeans and Americans, you have spread from India only, you have your roots from India.
Well, yes, Kirata Hunandra Palinda Pulkasa. It's like there were some, when Parasuram came, he drove out many Kshatriyas from India, and especially many of those Kshatriyas settled in the warmer regions. Therefore, around Italy, Spain, and Greece, right? There, in those countries, many of those Kshatriyas settled. Turkey also. Yeah, they all settled there. But then, in the north, they didn't want to go to the north because the north is freezing. It's so cold, right? How can you live there? So the Vikings and those kind of people, they were the tribals that I was speaking about. Because Shastra also speaks about Kirata, Hunandra, Palinda, Pulkasa, Abira, Sambhakasadya, Yen, Sapapa, Yatapasraya, Sira, Sujyanti tasmai prabhavishnave namaha. It is said the Kiratas, those from Africa, the Hunas, the Europeans, Kinanda, Hunanda, Pulkasa, what are the Pulkasas again? I forgot. The Palindas, these are the Greeks, the Italians, and so on. The Hunas, I already mentioned. The Andhras, right? State in India. These are all sinful births, but they can also be purified by worshipping Lord Vishnu. So we see that both are there. Yeah. But there were sages from Europe also. They're also mentioned amongst the sages in Srimad Bhagavatam, European sages. So even in ancient time there were some European sages. Yes.
Yeah, I'll try to defend. I'm just curious because currently we still can see that the majority of the positions in the government or in the science, they still belong to man. So is there any reference in the scriptures when actually women will take over, or will it happen at all, or what? Will it change?
First of all, the fact that the men have ruled the world is not a claim to fame. They made a big mess of it. So, in that sense, they didn't do a good job, is it? Well, at different points in time, women have become more predominant. Like in some of the Greek states, women were actually ruling. So it's not necessarily always in the Germanic states, women have been very powerful. And land of hope and glory. And the rest of the song, do you know it?
I'm afraid not.
God save our gracious Queen, long live the Queen. I mean, the Queen. So Queen Victoria certainly had her influence, I mean, even in India, right? She's well known, kind of. Anyway, no, it's not about who has the government, but it's about character. The men are meant to be a little less emotional, right? And therefore, you see, when this emotions in itself are okay, but when we become influenced by the material energy, then our emotions become contaminated and controlled by the mind. We become influenced by lust, and then our feelings are controlled by lust. Therefore, for one who is materially conditioned, thinking, feeling, and willing is under the control of lust. So man should have a little more power to control their emotions, and therefore they should be able to be more sense-controlled. Whereas the women are a little more feeling the emotions a little bit stronger. Then when we become purified, then the emotions and we become freed from lust, then the emotions that remain are pure emotions, pure love. So we see that. We see that when we become devotees, we see that the women are very devotional by nature. And the men, But anybody can become purified, doesn't matter. male or female, because we are not these bodies. We're all spirit souls. And ultimately we can all awaken our love of God. But therefore, when it comes to leading in the conditioned state, if the men are of good character, then they can be strong in doing the right thing, and they should lead. In the liberated state, it's love of God that should lead, and whether they're men or women doesn't matter. Yeah.
I was doing one course, so I had to research on interfaith things, and I came across, there was one Frenchman called Paul Vignon, and he researched all the icons of Jesus Christ from the beginning till the end, and he said that 80% of the icons done before 600 years after the Christ, they had actually tilak, which exactly tilak, which came up to here, and it had like a moon on top. And they have the pictures, actually, they have a picture. 80% of them, they had tilak. And there is one Spanish family who built a church in Spain, and they had a Sudarshan chakra on top of it. And there were pictures also with priests, Catholic, I think they were Catholic priests, which they have everywhere the swastika on the robes.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, further indications, right? Difficult to take these things as hard proof, And scientists will always sort of say, like, no evidence, just circumstantial. But meanwhile, there are lots of such indications, many. Okay, we've used up a lot of time, so I think we'll take a break now. A break fast. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada. Ki Jai.